Hey everybody, so Crusader Kings 3 Paths to Power recently released, and I'm kind of excited to talk about it in this video. Why am I excited to talk about it? Because we have a very positive review score on this DLC, which means a lot of people are actually enjoying this DLC. For those of you guys who don't know, most Paradox games, Creative Assembly games, lots of games that release lots of DLC tend to get very poor reviews on their DLC because some people are opposed to the very concept of DLC, which is a bit odd, and some people just use the negative review score as a way to show their displeasure with the game, either because of a bad patch or maybe because they didn't fix one particular issue they had. But basically these games always tend to not really have the best reviewed DLC. Despite that, this one has a very positive review score. 89% is pretty good for a DLC to a game that's 4 years old right now. So what did this DLC do? Why am I excited to talk about it? Well, it did two things in particular, two big things. The first thing it did is it added the Byzantine Empire rework. That's these guys here, the Eastern Roman Empire, the Byzantine Empire. It reworked their government. We're not really going to be talking about it. It reworked Greek culture, gave some extra stuff to Norman culture, Armenian culture, blah, 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 blah. I'm not going to talk about it. The second thing it did, and the thing we're going to be focusing on right now, is it added wandering characters, landless characters. For those of you guys who don't know, Crusader Kings 3 is a game about owning land, about being in a dynasty. So how could a game about playing a feudal empire, owning land, being part of a dynasty, how could a game like that have a system wherein you don't own land, you are not part of a dynasty, and you can continue to play as a different character who isn't even related to you at all? How could a game add something like that? Through lots of hard work and actually, seemingly, through doing it pretty well, which is why I'm going to be talking about that. But a lot of people seem to look at this system and they think to themselves, I don't really know what to do. I'm overwhelmed. I don't really know what I want to do. I don't know how I can do it. And that's kind of what this video is going to be about. I'm going to be giving you guys ideas on what to do for landless characters. I'm going to be kind of reviewing it a little bit and telling you what it is, but I'm also going to be giving you a lot of ideas because the developers, this game is a very roleplay heavy game, and the developers have seen fit to give a lot of things that players can do to kind of have interesting characters, playstyles, starts, things like that. There's many different things you can do, including 6 historical characters. These characters are historical. They did live in real life. These are what we know about them, and I'm going to go into them and tell you, a little bit of history about them. But in addition to knowing these historical characters, there's just a lot of unique or creative things you can do with even your own custom characters that can actually, the developers have put a lot of effort and time into allowing you to do that. So the first thing we're going to be doing is talking about these historical characters and, kind of telling you who they are. You should probably go watch a video about them that's actually about them and not just listening to me. But I'm going to be giving you kind of a general backstory. So, it kind of fills your blood with some ideas here. And then we're going to be talking more particularly about the wandering system itself and why you can do some creative different things with it. So first up, we have Hairweird the Wake. I'm going to call him the Wake because I don't know. Am I pronouncing Hairweird correctly? So in game, we have England. England is currently being conquered by William the Conqueror, named because he might have conquered England, William. And the Normans conquer England, and the Normans are Norse who settled in France. They are Norse French people, and they are historically pretty relevant. They did a lot of stuff. But anyway, the Normans conquer England, and they eventually put England under French rule, Norse French rule, but still French rule. Hairweird the Wake is an Anglo-Saxon. He's not quite English, he's Anglo-Saxon. And this dude wants to defend his people who conquered the old people of England. England's a very weird place, just don't think about it very much. Anyway, this is a historical character who, despite dying 6 or 7 years after the game start, so hopefully you can do a bit better than that, right? He died 6 or 7 years after the game start, but he tried or did not try. It's a little bit, it's a little bit ambiguous because obviously the rulers at the time called him a horrible bandit, murderer, etc. But he also kind of opposed William the Conqueror. It's a bit unclear. We don't really know what happened. At either rate, what we do know is that under William's rule, I think like 33% of people in England died because he was like trying to consolidate his rule, and by doing that, a lot of people died. A lot of these events where like huge population die-offs happened don't really get noticed People don't really talk about them, but this is one of the times it happened actually amazingly to the people of of England. Shocking, I know. So if you want to oppose Norman rule, if you don't want Norman culture to mix with Anglo-Saxon culture and make this English culture, if you don't want that to happen, if you want to stay a good, pure-blooded Anglo-Saxon man, you can play Here World the Wake and try to oppose William the Conqueror. So I should mention, by the way, for those of you who've played Crusader Kings 3 in your life, these people have unique story content. These are event chains and sometimes even mechanics themselves that these characters have to kind of make their playstyle different. Here World the Wake has the, I think it's called the Harrowing of England. Boy, I really should have looked that up before starting this video, but it's too late now. So he tries to oppose it, and William tries to not oppose it and actually do it and burn the English down, especially the North English. He wants to burn them down and turn the people of... It gets complicated at any rate. A lot of people died. Okay, let's move on. Rodrigo Diaz. Now, this guy's called El Cid. You can probably go watch a video on him. He was a dude who fought against Muslims, then fought against a lot of Christians to combine the Christian crown, then fought against Muslims with other Muslims, then got exiled from the Christian kingdom, then fought against Christians with the Muslims, then got welcomed back, then fought Muslims with the Christians, then got exiled again, then fought against not against the English, he fought against Christians with the Muslims, and blah 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 blah. In game, Rodrigo Diaz, despite being difficulty medium, is not difficulty medium. This guy is very, very powerful. He's a very, very powerful commander who can trash any battle in game. He's outrageously powerful, and you can take El Cid, and you can actually, those of you who know El Cid, you can actually make a dynasty under his name. You can form a kingdom under his name. You can do anything you want with him, really. You can convert him to Islam and to conquer the Christians. You can keep him Christian, conquer all the Muslims. You can complete the Reconquista. You can stop the Reconquista. You can stay unlanded. You can land yourself. There's anything you can do with El Cid. He's an outrageously powerful character, the friend of King Sancho II. He doesn't last very long either, King Sancho. Historically, in-game, he lasts a while. Moving on, we got Wallada bint Al-Mustakfi. I don't know, we're going to call her Wallada. So Wallada in-game is represented as the last of the Umayyads, the Umayyad dynasty, the Umayyad Caliphate, in fact. Now, I'm not really going to be talking much about that because I don't know whether or not she actually was the last one. It's a little bit up in the air. I don't really think... Yeah, it even says in-game, one of the last of the Umayyads. I don't think she was the last one. But in-game, she's represented as being in the last one, in the actual game mechanics themselves. Now, she's 65, so she's probably not going to be having any kids at her age. And so she is the last of the Umayyads. And the Umayyads were obviously the rulers of the Umayyad Caliphate, who were eventually overthrown. And the people who overthrew them invited the last remaining Umayyads to a dinner in which they were like, we will forgive you, and you know what, you guys can just go continue to live, and it's totally cool. And then they murdered all the Umayyads. The Umayyads, then the remaining ones, escaped to Spain and had the Umayyad Caliphate exist in Spain. That went on for a while until they were overthrown again. At either rate, Wallada is one of the last of the Umayyads. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, because otherwise this will be really awkward. So in-game, she's got some special mechanics. She's a poet. Historically, she actually was a poet. And she was a very powerful, not quite a feminist, but she opposed a lot of the Muslim customs regarding their treatment towards women. In fact, she walked around without a veil, which many people did get annoyed at. A lot of people do seem to have been annoyed at that, so I want to make sure my mic is, I'm speaking properly into it right now. A lot of people did get annoyed at her not wearing her veil, but she had many bodyguards who thought that she was a very smart, intelligent woman, which she does seem to have been. She wrote many poems, which in-game is represented. She has a poem book, which every time you write a poem actually goes into her book and makes it a little bit more powerful, which enables you to kind of get a mercenary camp going, or maybe a learning camp. It really depends. You can do anything you want with her. And you get this powerful relic, which you can carry around, of Wallada's poems. She starts with a lot of gold. Historically, she died at 90. In-game, not sure if she's going to last that long. But at any rate, it's a different, unique start with some background to it, some information about that. Historically, she did start a salon for women, where she taught women to write poetry. This all did happen historically, by the way. You can actually look this up. She did do all of this, so there you go. Robert is the one dude who doesn't really deserve to be around all these other characters. If you know these other characters, you're probably thinking to yourself, who the hell is this Robert guy? So this is one of the Norman mercenaries of the time who died, I think it was like 5 years after after the 1066 game start. He dies in like 5 years. It is not a long period of time, okay? He fights the Seljuk Turks with the Byzantines, but unfortunately the Seljuk Turks still had their God mode activated until... The Turks had God mode until about the 1600s. At any rate, Robert dies, and that's it. That's his story. He doesn't seem to have really any particularly good thing about him. I don't really know. I looked into it for a bit, and I couldn't really find why they made him a character, other than I guess he's kind of young and he's a Norman. That's about it. That's all he's got going for him. But he's a Norman mercenary. They describe it as, will Robert find the glory he seeks as a great commander, or will he fall victim to the nest of vipers that is a Byzantine court? Yeah, he didn't really do much. I don't know. Maybe I don't know much about him. So I'm going to save Hassan-i Sabbah for last, but then we got Sulab Kutalmish-Aglu. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. I probably am not. So Suleiman, very historically relevant character. Although the Seljuk Empire itself is currently invading for Armenia, Suleiman formed an offshoot who invaded and formed the Sultanate of Rum. That's right. This is the character. This guy right here. This is the historical man who first invaded into Anatolia and formed the Turkic kingdom in Anatolia. Now, I don't know why he doesn't have unique story content. These 4 characters have story content, but not him. Seems a little bit odd, at any rate. I don't really know why they didn't do that. He's one of the only characters who's founded... effectively through his conquests. He's one of the only characters that is currently attached to a modern nation state. You could argue that El Cid is, but Suleiman made the actual conquests himself that led to the Turks being in Anatolia. So if that's something you like, well, there you go. Pretty important character there. Hassan-i Sabbah. So this is the man of the mountain, man from the mountain. It's like, I'm not really sure which one it is. I think he's called both. People don't really know. So anyway, this was a Shia cleric who founded the Hashan Order. Yes, this is the actual founder of the world's first assassins. Right here, Hassan-i Sabbah. The way he's depicted in-game is he is an enormously powerful learning character, a very powerful cleric who has the faith in Imamism, which I believe it's represented in game. That's what they kind of use for Shia. There's multiple branches of Shia, so religion is complicated. Don't even ask me about it. At any rate, this character is very powerful, and eventually he did found the Hashan Order, and then he continued to exist. Well, he didn't continue to exist, but at the very least, his mountain fortress continued to be independent until eventually Genghis Khan, was it Genghis Khan? I don't think it was actually Genghis himself. I think it was the Mongols. Oh, I'd have to look that up. Maybe. I don't think it was actually Genghis himself. But I think it was his son. Maybe his son's son. I don't know. Anyway, they invaded to Persia, and he tried to assassinate them. And, well, I shouldn't say he did. His order did. They failed, and eventually the Mongols were the first people who managed to actually siege his capital and burned it down and completely destroyed the order. His Hashan Order is they killed many crusaders who actually invaded in. They killed many Muslims as well. They killed a lot of people. They were the world's first pay for kill order. Okay, so we have the background on that, but what can you actually do in game? What can you do in game on these characters? Well, let's make a ruler. I have some ruler ideas here, but let's just go ahead and make a ruler, and you can kind of see here. So, of course, those of you who don't know Crusader Kings, you can make your own adventure. So let's create our own adventure here. And I have some here. Grimir? Who is this guy? Who are you, buddy? I don't even know who you are. Oh, this guy's funny. I don't even know why I did this guy. He is a Norse man. I don't know why I made him Norse, but there we go. So you got Master Grimir of the Norse Wyverns. And let's go ahead and when we pick this character, completely custom landless character, we own no land. In fact, all we own as of right now is our camp. This camp right here. And we have a level 1 pavilion with no built-up buildings. Boy, we're not doing too great, us, right now. But what can you do as an adventurer? Well, you do missions, and you can choose a camp purpose. There are 4 purposes, effectively. Sword for hire, scholars, explorers, and freebooters. There's also become legitimist, but that is if you have a claim on a kingdom. It's very powerful, but most people aren't going to have claim on a kingdom. Now, I'm playing completely vanilla right now. The main thing you do as an adventurer is you decide what is your camp path. Now, this does not do with the stat system. Now, adventurers are very, very played up into the stat system. You have diplomacy, martial, stewardship, intrigue, and learning. In the base game, these stats aren't very well distributed. Intrigue is kind of the odd man out, not really being good for much, because how often does a king really need to be doing subterfuge? Many of my characters never do subterfuge at all. And having it at a high stat isn't that great because you have things like spy masters and agents that just do most of the work anyway. Learning is decent. Diplomacy, ironically, as a king, diplomacy tends to not actually do that much, which is kind of odd. Most of the authority you control is how much money you make and how big your armies are. So it's odd that diplomacy is not actually the best for being diplomatic. But on adventurers, each of these stats is very important. So we can do schemes here, or we can do settle boundary disputes. If I go to settle boundary dispute, this is a contract I'm doing right now. In fact, let me I'm just gonna go show you guys right now what we can do here. You can see right there, because I had such high stewardship, I was able to settle the boundary dispute, and that's it. I mean, you just walk in and do a construct. That I unfortunately didn't find any of them. Unfortunately, sometimes doing things live isn't the best here, but let's do some criminal contracts. Okay, so I didn't normally want to do criminal contracts. Okay, unfortunately, I did not find anything that isn't a scheme, which is very odd and annoying to me. But unfortunately, you know, if you do videos live like this, sometimes it happens. So let me just tell you guys, if you find things that aren't schemes, which I didn't, you can use many of your different stats to support that scheme. So in a stewardship scheme, often you can use your intrigue. So I could try to collect taxes by people by using my stewardship, and I could try to collect taxes by evaluating their properties and doing the right job and being very smart and knowing how much they owe. Or I could try to use my intrigue stat and just say, pay me, bitch. Or I could use my prowess stat and just say, I'm going to beat the crap out of you if you don't pay me, bitch. So there's a lot of different choices you have in this, which goes back into this camp purpose. You can be a freebooter, but while being a freebooter, although it is geared towards being an intrigue character, you could be a freebooter, effectively a criminal. You could be a criminal, but you could be a very prowess criminal. You could be a character who's just very strong and he just beats the crap out of people. You could have a character who's very high in intrigue, and you could use that intrigue to try to murder people or to try to counterfeit goods, or you could go on a treasury heist and you could use your good intrigue to try to steal goods. Or you could be a freebooter and you could just be a martial freebooter and you could rob people using your army, or you could just do a lot of different things. For sword for hire over here, this is generally going to be for martial, but there's other things you can do. You find prowess and martial contracts on average, meaning if you have a strong character or a character who's very good at leading armies, you can do swords for hire. Now, scholars is an interesting one right here. Now, although you get mostly learning and stewardship contracts and some diplomacy contracts, you could become a scholar who's also, ironically, just very strong. Shockingly, you'd be shocked to learn that many of these learning things where you have to make books or things like that can be cheated by just having a strong character who bullies the crap out of people. Which is funny. You can also be an explorer and you can just rock around the entire map. Now, this one is, of course, probably one of the most open lines. If you want to just walk around the map and be an explorer, it gives you transport contracts, which are, if you walk fast, you can do them quicker. That's about it. You also get more diplomacy, intrigue, and martial contracts, which is a lot of different contracts when you think about that. Now, by just walking around the map, what do you think helps you? Everything helps you when you walk around the map. You could be a dude who just walks around the map and helps settle boundary disputes, and you can have a high stewardship score. You can walk around the map and you can just settle a lot of things by using intrigue or learning or martial or diplomacy or prowess. It's really up to you, and that's what's good about it. It's really open-ended, and they didn't seem to just make it, this is the martial path. This is the learning path. This is the stewardship path. They didn't do that, which is what is one of the things that makes it very interesting. You could be an evil character, a criminal in intrigue, or you can make a criminal who's a criminal in learning, or you can make a criminal in martial or prowess or many different things. It might be harder in some categories to be a criminal who's good in stewardship, but, you know, not at all entirely impossible. Now let's move on to these lifestyles. So these are things that are, of course, fit into the 5 stats. But in these 5 stats, they do seem to have given you lots of, and this is when this thing kind of opens up and gets very interesting. This is when this kind of gets way more interesting. So in fact, I'm not going to talk about that. I'm going to leave it for last. We have these major adventurer decisions here. I am a Norse character. That's where Ray's Runestone comes from. But let's talk about these. We have become a great conqueror. Now this is if you make your character a conqueror, which is an enormously powerful attribute, potentially too powerful to ever get on your character, but we get it. This is if you're playing a martial character. If you're a legendary figure with 22 martial, blah 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 blah. If you fought kings, if you've got high prowess, if you fought emperors, if you have lots of commander traits, blah 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 blah, you can eventually become a great conqueror, which, as you can see right here, gives you a lot of bonuses. And you become a great conqueror, and you conquer land. It's just boy, it's pretty powerful, that one. So throughout your character's entire life, what you're trying to do here is win battles against kings and emperors. You need to participate in at least 20 wars. You need to participate in 5 wars against kings and emperors. You need high martial. You need 4,000 soldiers. There's a lot of traits here. You can become a champion of the Norse culture. So this one is this one's kind of interesting, actually. This one's interesting. So Armenian at game start is basically all entirely under control of other people. But what you could do is become a champion of Armenian culture. And what you could do after the Seljuks rampage through here and take all these Armenian lands, what you could do is eventually raise your character and become level of fame illustrious. And what you can do is you can walk over here to these Armenian people, and you can try to stage a peasant uprising, a separatist uprising here. And you rise up with the peasants, and you try to form an independent Armenian kingdom away from other people. That's an option. You can do that. You can do that to any culture. It doesn't have to be Armenian. It could be if the Polish are conquered, or the Russians, or the French, or the Hungarians, or the Occitans, or the Andalusians, or the Castilians. You can do anything. So you can make a character. You could look around this map and you can think, what's a culture that's generally Romanian? Romanian is generally always owned by other cultures. So you could be a champion of the Vlach people, and you could come in here and you could liberate them. These are, by the way, these are just decisions. All these systems work together. That's why I think that Landless is so interesting. Because who is a champion of Norse culture? Are you a criminal who comes in here and tries to free the Norse people? Are you a commander? Are you just really good at being a steward? Are you a scholar who comes in? Are you a diplomat who comes in and tries to be the champion of them? It doesn't really matter. This decision right here, although Great Conqueror is mostly based on being a high martial character, this champion of whatever culture you're playing as, you can be anything in this one. You could just be a character who travels around the map and becomes a very high learning character, and eventually he settles back down and he tries to free his Romanians and form Wallachia. I don't know, you get the idea. Knight of the Swan culture, this is if you want to become a knight errant, and if you want to be a champion for justice. Once again, this isn't really attached to anything other than you have to be a sword for hire camp purpose, but once you become exalted among men, and you get 10 martial prowess of no criminal nature, so you must have no criminal past to you, and then eventually you can become a knight errant, which is a trait which makes your knights very strong. That's about it. You get the Golden Coat of the Swan, a unique legendary armor, which is not very good. It's okay. You get a unique legend seed, and then your house is permanently buffed with the Swan Song, which is, it's okay. It's not great, but it's okay. And you can do a landless character, and you can become a Knight of the Swan by completing these contracts, and then you can also become a champion. So you could become a great hero of justice, and then you get what I'm trying to say here? You can become a hero of justice, and then you could go free the Vlach people. these work together. You can become the Travels. So my character is named Grimir Kentenares. I don't know why I did that one. Not really a Norse name. But if you travel to up to 60 locations, you can create a book. And you can write, it's really overpowered, by the way. They should probably nerf this. But that's not the point. If you travel to 60 points of interest, which if I start a travel here, you can see all these points of interest on the map. If during your character's lifetime you travel to all, well, I shouldn't say all 60, but at least 60 of these, you can eventually do this decision here and you can have the Travels. And you can create this powerful book for 500 gold that gives you a book that gives you 40% learning experience. I shouldn't say learning, lifestyle experience for all lifestyles, 40% that will sit in your family forever. So your entire family will permanently have this book reminding them of your original founder. This one is hard, by the way. This one is hard. It's called the Catholic path, but it's called whatever your religion is. So you could do the Ashari path, you could do the Ishmaeli path, you could do the Maturidi path. These are all Islamic. You could be the Tengri path. You could be the anything path. You could be the Vaishnavite path. Okay, so what is this? This is a very difficult thing to do. I tried to do it. Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's not. So if you are a character who is a paragon of virtue, and you've completed a pilgrimage to 2 different holy sites, and you're at a holy site of your religion, you can then become an ascended scholar, and from then on you'll be able to convert counties you visit to whatever religion you chose, either by the truth of your words or by the might of your sword. So if you have high language, you can teach people to convert to your religion. If you have high martial, you can force people to convert to your religion. And this is kind of unique and interesting. Now, it is one of the ways you can take a religion. And now this, I'm going to go into it right quickly here. This combines with Wandering Missionary. Because Wandering Missionary, and these learning paths are not the ones in the base game. Wandering Missionary is something you can use to convert a landed ruler to your religion. If you manage to convince them, you need a very high learning skill. You need either money to just kind of buy him over, piety, prestige, something. It's pretty hard to do, but you can convince people to convert to your religion. So if I took a religion that's mostly dead, let's say Mos Arabic, no, what's one that's like mostly dead? What's one that we could like, I don't even know, some thing, you get the idea. Zoroastrianism. Is that one? There you go, Zoroastrianism. So if I could convince a Zoroastrian ruler who owns this holy site, or sorry, if I could convince any ruler of that holy site to convert to Zoroastrianism, and then he converts the land to Zoroastrianism, and then I become, this is why I'm saying this is a bit complicated. I can follow the Zoroastrian path and ascend, and then I can convert all the land to Zoroastrian people, which is very, very powerful. Very interesting, but it's a way to bring back dead religions as a wandering character, particularly a wandering character who specialized very high into learning. It's very different. It's something that hasn't been in the game before. It's unique. It's something you could try to do. It's funny, I guess is the way to put it. But anyway, let's see, what else we got here? We got Found a Holding and Levy the Outcasts. Okay, these two are pretty bad. This one, you make a city. You use gold and you make a city. Big whoop. Do you care? No. Do I care? No. We're all bored by it. Okay, so let's talk about these lifestyles then. Because as you probably saw in the learning one, you can do some very different things with it. Things that the developers, this is new. This is interesting stuff here. So in the diplomacy is one of the most boring lifestyles for landless characters. Or I should say for landed characters. Generally, it doesn't really do that much that's interesting. Generally, it doesn't do that much that's cool. And that's still true for landless characters. It's pretty boring. I'm not going to lie to you right now. The diplomacy thing is pretty boring. There's basically nothing interesting they added here. There's basically nothing interesting at all. Yeah. The only one that's interesting is you have the Run Away With Me, where what you can do is you can try to elope with someone and run away with them. That's about it. You run away with me allows you to elope with non-lovers, so you can kind of just steal women into your camp. I guess that's about it. I looked through this a lot, and I talked about this a lot, and I sure did not see anything that was really interesting in the diplomacy tree. Boy, the diplomatic stat in this game continues to be like, what does it do? People like you more. Surely there could have been something with diplomacy, right? But no, they just kind of didn't add anything. I don't really know what they were doing. So let's move on to the Marshal. Now, Marshal itself is not very interesting on its own. Most of the things here are just what they are for landed characters as well. Most of the stuff is just the same exact stuff. So realistically, you're probably not that excited by it. So Marshal in a way is a way to make your army very, very, very powerful. And that is what it does as a landless character too. Marshal in itself is basically just a way to either unlock these decisions or to do mercenary contracts. For example, we can currently see right here that the Byzantine Empire is at war with the Seljuks. So what I can do is I can go to the Seljuks and I could offer to join war for money. I don't have any men-at-arms. Could I just like hire one? Let's just build a Bondi. And then I could offer military assistance to him, and he doesn't want to take it because my army is too small to be relevant. Okay, well, Alp Arslan, what about you? He will accept. Okay, so we join the Byzantines. So if my war contribution is at least 100 when the war ends, I get 25 gold. Then if I did a really good job, he'll pay me even more. Wow, thank you, Byzantine Empire. So I could offer to be a mercenary for these people. That's kind of what Marshal does. That's what they do. And there's some schemes around if there's tyranny, like if an overlord is trying to revoke a holding or something and they've rose up against them, you can join that as like an anti-tyranny war. You can be an anti-tyrant and run around the land and fight all the kings and restore justice to the world, I guess. I don't know. Marshal in itself, it's hard to describe Marshal because Marshal is kind of like, what's the way to put it? Marshal in a way is just to get a really strong army, so then you can do the other fun things in the game. So then you can wander the land fighting tyrants. So then you can help the Armenian or Vlach or whatever people. So then you can help the Persians rise up against the Turks. So, you know, that's kind of what Marshal is. It's very open-ended. They did a lot of work. Marshal's kind of the big winner of this expansion. Let's be real right now. Marshal's the big winner. There are so many things you can do with a Marshal character. You can also just be an evil, selfish Marshal character. You can just use your army to beat the crap out of people, threaten, beat up travelers, rob the nobility. You can just do whatever you want, really. Okay, let's move on. Stewardship. What's cool about stewardship? Okay. So stewardship has some interesting things what you can do as a steward character. You're mostly focused on making lots and lots and lots of money. Shocking. I know stewards do that. But there are some interesting things. There are some interesting things that you can do in this one. Which is you can have renowned officers and gather inspiration. This means as you continue to move around the map, this works with the wandering thing. If you move around the map, your followers can get inspirations to make some very, very powerful gear. Then you can use renowned officers so they can produce significantly higher quality artifacts when crafting weapon, armor, or smith inspirations. So you could be a stewardship character and you could craft yourself a very powerful sword, very powerful armor, and then I'm not really sure what to do with that, but it's kind of cool. It's kind of LARPy. It's like telling your own story. Okay, so this armor and sword has been passed down for generations in my dynasty, made by our evil ruler, Boss Grimir. I made him look evil because he's supposed to be an evil character. I'm not sure why I made him steward. He's like an evil steward. Just don't ask about it. Now, this is where the found a holding comes down to. What you can do is you can found a holding and you put down a city, and it builds a city, and then that city pays you gold, and then you build more cities. It's kind of an interesting way to just slap down cities throughout all the land on baronies that have nothing on them. So like I could go to Spain, and maybe not Spain because it's got a lot of cities. So I could go to Eastern Europe, which is very underdeveloped right now, and I could slap down a bunch of cities. So I could be a Russian character, a Russian steward who just slaps down cities over all of Russia. I build up Russia using somehow the vast amounts of wealth I gained from being an unlanded character. I'm not really sure how unlanded characters get that much, but let's say I'm playing a Russian character and I just slap all these cities down. And then each city I have gives me more gold. And I continue to found more and more holdings, which gives me gold, and then I use that gold, and then I guess I buy land from someone, and then I have lots of cities in the land that I now try to conquer. It's okay. Like, it's for LARPing purposes, like, I get it. You know, you're gonna build up land, and then you're gonna settle on that land, and it's gonna be all built up, and now it's gonna be rich once you own it. I get it. It's just, I feel like Steward didn't really get the A game. It got the B game. Marshall got the A game, Learning got the A game, Steward got the B game, Diplomacy got the D team. Diplomacy didn't even get a team. Okay. The only other thing I saw here was in the Administrator. Now, Administrator does have some LARPy things you can do with it. If you ever wanted to be like your Berserk or things like that, at the very least, you know, Golden Age Berserk, that's what Administrator is. So you can see here, what you can do is encourage relationships, which encourages all your different followers. You can see right now I only have 2, but you'll get way more throughout time. You can encourage your followers to have relationships, which encourages them to, you know, form friendships, become lovers, get married with each other. You can be likable, so all your characters have very high aptitude. Aptitude affects how good they are at tasks. So if I made one of them my smith, or I made one of them my pike captain or stuff like that. So Administrator could get very, very powerful people. You can scout for talent and find people very easily. That's about it. It just makes your characters very, very powerful, which allows you to get a good army. And just not like a good army because you yourself are good, but just because all your characters are good. It just allows you to get a lot of characters and allows them to like each other a lot, I guess. You know, it's okay. You know, if you're looking for roleplay, that's something you could do. Then once you become landed, you have those characters in you. You're no longer Golden Age Berserk if you become landed. But hey, maybe you stay landless for a bit and you just play a mercenary band and stomp the crap out of the AI for a bit for fun. I don't know. Intrigue is interesting. It's intriguing. Now, why is intrigue interesting? Because while stewardship doesn't really make that much money, I mean, it does make a lot of money, I'll give it that. Intrigue makes stewards look poor. Now, how do they do that? Because it's Heist Treasury. Heist Treasury allows you to make a lot of money. It's already 109 gold at baseline, and then you can steal even more gold based on the loot available here. It's like 10 times the loot, which if you heist treasury on some of these areas can get really ridiculous, and then you can multiply that even further. Intrigue also has a lot of intriguing different things you can do. Of course, you've got your seducer meme. Yeah, you can seduce people. This has been in the game forever. It's not really that interesting. The only interesting thing you can do is if you're playing like a wandering female character, you can seduce kings and emperors. And successful seduce schemes against rulers will add the target to your roll of patrons and give you a weak hook if you choose to become lovers. So you can do, it can be difficult to add emperors and kings to your roll of patrons because they generally don't like giving you contracts. But what you can do if you're a wandering female character, you can keep having sex with all the men around you, and then you'll get very rich by having a lot of sex, I guess. That's the only funny thing you can do in seducer. But in schemer and torturer, these are the ones with the more interesting things. Now, why is that? Well, over here we have the abduct scheme. You can just kidnap people and then sell them back. And if you go full on into twin schemed and then eventually the schemer role, you can abduct a lot of people. You can piss everyone off. You can continue to abduct everyone in the countryside and then sell them back to their kingdoms, which, yes, does actually make a lot of money. You can also get, if you want to just be an explorer intrigue character for some reason, you can do search for secrets, which allows you to learn the secret of people around you. And then you can blackmail them on secrets, and you can demand payments. You can turn a secret into a hook, and then you can demand payment from people in order to not tell it, which is funny, I guess. You can also just murder people randomly because you're funny. That's not the funny thing. Torturer Torturer. Torturer is the funniest tree, in my opinion. Now, why is Torturer so funny? Because whenever you torture someone, you can get stats. Intrigue stats are good. Prowess stats are also good. As I've said, these are 2 stats which allow you to do very good schemes that make you a lot of money. So you can get very high intrigue and very high prowess to do them. The other one here, and I'm going to show this right here, is Thriving in Chaos. Each stress level gives you 4 martial, 4 intrigue, and 6 prowess. Which is a lot. Unlanded intrigue characters can get Thriving in Chaos, and they can just get very high stress levels and then get enormously powerful from it. But it gets really much funnier in that way. You can get criminal contract rewards plus 100%, which, as I've mentioned here, this is already 109 baseline plus 100%, then multiply that by 50% from some of your camp shenanigans, and we can start getting absolutely ludicrous heists going. In addition to that, the funniest one in my opinion is the Long Pig. Enables the turn into mystery meat execution method, allowing you to turn prisoners into provisions based on weight. They have to clarify that just so we understand it's based it's based on weight. Do you guys see that? Just be clear, can't be making mystery meat out of can't be making it out of skinny people. And that's everything you can do as a wandering character, which, wow, that actually does seem like a lot of different things and a lot of different ways to play the game. Do you just want to be a character who runs around and beats people up? Well, you could play Martial, or you could play Intrigue, or you could play a Prowess character. Do you just want to be a character who runs around and wins wars? Well, you could be a Martial character, but you could also potentially be a Steward character with really good captains that just make your army really, really, really powerful. Do you want to rob people? Well, then you could be an Intrigue character. Do you want to be a learning character? Well, then you can run around and solve people's issues. You could also be an Intrigue character who technically is above the law because you're doing everything legally. You're just threatening people. You could run around and kidnap people. You can kidnap people and turn them into mystery meat if you're so inclined. If you were so inclined, you could feed an army with a couple of people you kidnap, which doesn't really make any sense, but sure as hell you can do it. There's also a couple also cool things I want to show you guys right here. So if I go to, I need to find a temple. If I go to this temple here real quick, my character is not good at intrigue, but hypotheticalizing, if I was good at intrigue, what I could do here real quick, oh my god, there's so many events for wandering. Like, I get it, guys. You're not very good at avoiding danger. If I go right here to this temple, a lot of people don't know that cities and temples have different things we can do. We can go to the church ground, we can go into the church, and if you're very high in intrigue, you can rob churches. You can wander the countryside, going church to church, wandering the crap out of them, and if you have a high enough intrigue, you don't get caught. If you get caught, though, you eventually get gallows bait. What does gallows bait do? This pisses people off, and eventually the rulers of realms can start to kick you out of realms because they're really annoyed that you keep running around and robbing all their churches and all their rich people, and you keep being a dick to everyone, and everyone kind of hates you. But, you know, if you don't get caught, because you're a very high intrigue character, boy, churches sure would be lucrative areas for money, or mosques, or really anything, really. Now, if we go to cities here real quick, I want to go into one last cool thing about cities. Cities, a lot of people don't know that cities have craftsmen. That's right. You can go to cities and you can use all this money, and I could buy a Greek mace. A Greek mace for 10 prowess and 5% night effectiveness. Pretty good. Or I could buy armor. None of these rolled up good. Okay. Well, at any rate, that's the last thing you could do. Oh, wait. I forgot there's also accessories you could buy. The Ashkenazi brooch. Mercenary higher cost reduction, romance, scheme length, and prestige. It's not really that amazing. So there's lots of things you can do with Wanderers, and there's lots of things you can do that I'm hoping through watching this video I've kind of given you ideas, because I think a lot of people play Wanderers and they get bored, but right now I would actually say the Wanderer playstyle is the most fun thing to do in the game. The most fun thing I've had to do in Crusader Kings, probably since game launch, has been to just wander around the map aimlessly, just wander around the map and pick different things I can do. Intrigue characters are outrageously powerful. Crime does pay. Crime is very lucrative. Crime is Being a criminal is outrageously effective in this game. You might get imprisoned a few times. People might want to murder you. You might game over, but oh my god, dude, robbing rich people. You could be a Robin Hood type character. You'll get kicked out real quick, and they will come to murder you. But there are lots of events, and there's lots of cool things for being a criminal. It's actually a well-supported thing. There's technically this thing over here, Levy the Outcasts, where you can get unique men-at-arms to follow you around, bandits and poachers and things like that. I'm gonna be real with you. It's so weak that I'm not even gonna talk about it. They might adjust it later, but for now it's so weak. Dude, it's really, really, really weak. It's so weak that I don't even think it's worth discussing. Anyway, yeah, think about things you want to do here, because honestly, there's a lot of cool things you can do with Wanderers right now. I really think they did a good job with this. They did a good job at allowing you to role play a character in many different ways. And it's so open-ended, the systems they've made. It's so cool, the systems they've made. I didn't roll up a good second. Oh, that's by, see these court positions? This is what stewardship does, so it increases their aptitude. So by increasing their aptitude in a road like this, for those of you guys who don't get why that stewardship thing was so good, by constantly increasing their aptitude, this would allow my second, for example, to get enough aptitude that eventually they could be giving me +5 in every stat, which, as you might imagine, is pretty powerful. Pretty powerful. So that's all I gotta say. I'm going to talk about some other stuff with this expansion because it's not all amazing, but I just want to talk about the Wanderer playstyle and give people ideas as to what they could make, because I think there's a lot of cool stuff here that people just don't really understand what they could do, don't really understand. You want to be a warrior of justice, if you want to be a knight of the heart, and you want to get the knight errant and then eventually rise up and form a kingdom of oppressed people, you can do that. If you just want to be a conqueror, you can do that. If you want to eventually spread Catholicism to Africa as a preacher for some reason, you can do that. You can do anything, really. Honestly, this game in its current state, there's so many different ways to RP your character. There's so many different things you can do. I would very much recommend it. So thank you all for watching. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, everybody. And as always, I should say you guys should subscribe. You guys should subscribe and leave comments. I probably should say that at the beginning of the video. I told myself I would do that, but yeah, that does help if you guys subscribe and leave comments. That's very beneficial to me. So thank you all for watching. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.